The continuous flow intersection, we're going to take a minute and look at that. Look at it like it's not been looked at maybe in a while. And that's going to be, we're going to look at doing some modeling, where we look at land use, where we look at actual buildings, where we flow traffic through. I'm not talking about what GDOT's already done. I'm talking about real modeling, where you can turn the wick up and it'll put more cars into it, or turn it down and it'll put less cars through there, where you actually see what's going to happen. The real advantage to that is that people who look at it, who are going to be most affected by this continuous flow intersection, can see what it really happens in real time by seeing those things take place. That type of modeling is just coming online. I just met with some people today in terms of how we might be able to accomplish that. We've got to talk to GDOT, talk with them, and see if they have an interest in it. But that's the type of thing that the CID would offer, and maybe a little bit of expertise and experience in terms of doing road work and developmental highways, creating opportunities to improve access, and maybe into some of the green space that you all have, ensure that there's adequate and safe deceleration lanes and acceleration lanes. Obviously, we would have liked to have done that along Highway 78, but the right of way was so daggone expensive we couldn't afford to do it. So that's the truth of the matter. Y'all have an opportunity now to put something in place that we can begin to lay a plan that would allow us to think a little forward of that.
We don't want to have the CID waste their time or spinning the wheels if there's not a consensus among council. So before we ask them to work on any resolution, council needs to decide if this is something we're interested in going forward on, and if we are, what boundaries would we like them to look at?
Well, if I could speak up, I mean, I thoroughly agree with CIDs, and I have absolutely no problem with expansion. However, I have a concern about if we just go up 78, the 150 some businesses will be affected, going into that pool with the other 400 and some that there's a voting block for. And I just don't believe in taxation without representation. So before I could agree to it, I would like to see something where that's a separate district with its own representation, you know, something so that we're not going to people and asking them to be taxed, knowing that they're not going to have the representation on the board, or the opportunity for representation on the board. That's my only concern with it. And if we can get that worked out, then I wouldn't. I only speak for Tom. I'd have no problem. But I'd like to see that negotiated some way that both parties are agreeable on.
About given the state law, and I think I've quoted the state law to you all and the nuances of that before, what our intention would be, if it is to join the CID, to expand the CID, that we would set aside all funds where you all could know where all the money's going and all the projects could be directed in there. I think that people to the west would like that as well. So we have that component. In terms of how the CID board is made up, that's a constitutional issue, not a constitutional, a legislative issue about how it's set up. We're looking at another CID opportunity that's not connected here. And there is a way to accommodate it, first of all. We could have it called Evermore West. It would have a separate board entirely. And you could contract with us for the administrative services side of that. That is not unique. Is it more cumbersome, timely, and costly? The answer is probably yes. But if you all can't get to the point that you feel comfortable with it, then that is with how we originally proposed it. Then that is an option that the council can determine whether or not they want to do. I think there's one at Perimeter CID that currently does that because they go across county lines and they had to do it that way. the issue is, if you set your own CID up, and you have less than about $200 million of taxable properties, if you have less than that, I would question whether or not it's gonna be worth the effort of creating a new CID.
I think if it's a separate board, I think that defeats the whole purpose of expanding the CID. The majority of, the CID currently already comes up to City Hall. The Provino Shopping Center is already in the CID, and schools, churches, residential don't get taxed. They don't have representation on the board. And so as far as, you don't really have property owners that would be represented, that would form a complete board, going from here down to Rosebud. You don't have business owners
Okay,
that
well,
would form a
then
whole board.
my question to you would be then the 100 and some people that would have to come into the CID to move down to the end of, Rosebud, I think it's 100 and some people. You're comfortable with those people coming into the CID knowing that they will not have representation on the board?
Well, I think I think that's up to them. If they're comfortable with it, then who am I to say no? The resolution, all it does is it allows the CID to go forward and contact those 105 people. They have to get, is it 80%? 75% of those people have to sign off and say, yeah, we're okay with this, but if they say, we want representation on the board, we're not okay with it, they wouldn't sign off, and then it doesn't go anywhere. But all council's doing is authorizing the opportunity for them to speak to those people.
Well, some of the same concerns, but it's more kind of what, Larry, you said a minute ago, with the reason not to go down 124 is that you don't want to add another burden of tax to those people. Well, do we really want to add another burden of tax right now to these people? I mean, what's the difference?
Residential don't get taxed.
There's not.
No, we're not talking about the businesses.
Right, residential doesn't get
We
taxed.
still
The
have vacant
businesses-
places going down 78 that are going to be filled.
Well, and it may be that we don't want to expand down there, but right now we are actively working on incentives for the town center area that covers 124. I mean, that has been our focus for the past couple of years. So I don't think that to say that and then to go back on the tax, I don't think that's consistent with each other. We haven't talked about incentives for the 78 area, although the opportunity zone is going to cover part of that area, and so that's going to save some of those businesses some tax money. You may say that that offsets itself, but again, maybe it's not something we want to do. I don't know.
Well, I'm just saying, looking at it, if you're trying to entice a new business for whatever reason, and that's part of, what a CID would do, is that they want to build that business base. But then you just say,
I don't know if that's-
here's another layer of tax. I don't see it any different than going down 124. I guess maybe I don't see it clear enough.
Well, the big thing, sir, is that we're able to, I think that what we do with the money is gonna be seed money to improve that area. That's how we do most things. You know that there's a 80-20 split on federal money, and sometimes it's 50-50 on some state money and those types of things. Well, that money has to come from somewhere. The people, a couple of things. One is, the city of Snellville has a representative on our board.
Actually, we don't.
Actually, you have a position.
Thank you.
Pardon me. Well, let me spin that back at you then. You have had in the
Yes,
past.
we have.
And they have been vocal in representing the city's position. And I have witnessed that they had a great deal of influence on decisions that were made. Obviously, the equity shares that get talked about a great deal, it depends on how much equity that is and whether or not people want to get out and work to get proxies. But there's a linchpin in all of this that somehow gets overlooked. We have about 40 to 70 people who show up on the plurality side, the one man, one vote, pardon me, ladies. But one person comes in there and they vote. If you had 100 people in there that voted a particular candidate in every situation I've ever seen on the plurality side, they would be elected. I've never seen 100 votes cast. So it is a way to put, it is a democratic process. except for the 3 votes that are there that are based on equity. And that's 1 vote per 1,000. That's by state law. That's not something that Evermore set. But the other thing, Councilmember Howard, I think that what we would say is that once we get through the city of Snellville, it would be our intention to move into the unincorporated area and go all the way to the county line to create that continuity all the way down through the corridor.
Okay, so notwithstanding Walmart and McGee, which is,
Yes.
I mean, that's huge.
Sure.
From the point that the CID enters the city through Provino's,
Sure.
what else have we done?
What else have you gotten?
Yeah.
Oh, we contributed about $1.5 million of landscape work along the 78 improvement area.
I'm talking about within the boundaries of what coming into the city in there, so that's what we're talking about?
I mean, we didn't spend $1.5 million inside the city.
That's my question.
Yeah. A lot of the utilities that you see, the landscape that you see, areas that the grass is cut once a week. There's no other place that I know of around here. If you go down 120 and some of these other roads around here, grass is not cut every week. Trash is not picked up once or twice a week, and we do that inside the city too. Our efforts at being involved in the continuous flow intersection takes a lot of our time, a lot of coordination, trying to be of help to keep you all up to speed. One of the most important things that we've been involved in, meaning the CID and specifically me, is the Atlanta to Athens corridor that can have a significant impact on your town. I've made sure that your folks here have been up to speed and online and those types of things. That's the kind of effort that we would continue to make, and I think therein lies the value added side of it.
Okay, but would you agree from the point that you entered the city on 78 coming east to Provino's, there's still a lot to be done there?
Well, there's a huge amount to be done there, but
Okay.
when the city comes up with the vision of what they want to do with land use, it's certainly going to impact what you do with roadways and that type of thing. And that's what I like about modeling, where you can overlay different ideas and concepts that you all may have about the use of that land.
And Councilman Hunter, something Mr. Brooks touched on, going back to your first question to me about why that area, not the 124. He's right, they do get in, the CID does get an 80-20, they do get federal funding, and sometimes the 78 corridor is neglected down going east. We've been talking for a couple years now about the sidewalks. It's not something that we have the money to budget. We're working on the safe route to schools, but that's something not only could the CID help with our grant applications, because they do have a more constant communication with the Department of Transportation and the federal government, they also can help with funding with that. And also that intersection, we get a lot of complaints about the striping on that intersection. I know that I've talked with Mr. Davis about that and with Ms. Johnson about that. It's not state control, it's not a city controlled road, and it's not something we have funding for. But those are things that, it's not business driven, but those are transportation things that are simple that could possibly, CID could possibly help with right away. And you also asked what had been done. We're all forgetting the biggest thing they've done that's impacted the city and has been in the city limits was taking down the reversible lanes. I mean, that used the majority of their funding, and that had a huge impact on our city.
Well, and some would argue not such a good impact. So, I mean, there's always that side. Well, I guess my point is that, we want more before we've kind of done all we can do with what we got, I guess is my kind of a little bit of a sticking point, I guess.
I believe that this body needs to sit together rather than two separate meetings. This body needs to sit together as one body and hash all these things out before we ask anybody to spend any money. Just that simple. I think these are things that can be hashed out. It takes 6 people sitting around the table with boxing gloves, mediator, anything else that might be necessary, and working it out. And if that's what it's going to take, until that's done, it's not. we're just wasting your time. And I don't think that's fair to you.
Well, we want to provide as much information. You know, you and I have spoken, and I have suggested exactly what you just said. And then come out with a recommendation, but there's no sense in me getting a memorandum of understanding written that we have not gone through that vetting process, which is what I would say. But, Mr. Howard, I appreciate you saying that this little Walmart store, just forgiving that. I can't forgive $815,000, that's what CID contributed.
No, I made very clear that that was very.
I understand,
it's
but
huge.
it's nearly $1 million.
It's huge.
Yes, sir.
Good. We will take this off any future agendas until further notice. Moving on then to.
Well, then I would ask that the city manager arrange a work session specifically for this matter. I don't want to take it off until, I think we need to
Well,
work
we
it
get a
off.
work set, that's what I'm saying, we'll take it off our agenda until further notice when we get we'll arrange something, but
Okay.
we'll all get notice of when that, I'll call a special call meeting, and when I do that, I'll let y'all know, but it's not gonna appear on a future council agenda until further notice. Moving on to Arts Commission candidates, I know Councilman Emmanuel, I had emailed you that there were citizens interested. We did receive Miss Bailey. I just received it, so I haven't had a chance to pass it on to council. So I'll give this to Melissa and ask that if she can send that out, and if we can put it back on the next agenda once we have time to look over those. We did meet the art commissioners. I spoke with them about, there's 3 vacancies on the art commission. We did speak, a lot of the people that are already on it represent the fine art, paintings and things like that, not dance, not ballet, not music. And so we did talk about trying to find some diversity and trying to find people from those other avenues of the arts to represent on that council. We also talked about possibly the need to have someone business oriented on that council, because sometimes artists don't always make the best business decisions. And so, you know, if they're going to be organizing things or doing fundraisers or spending taxpayer money, that we may want a business person on there. So those are all things to consider when looking at the applications or thinking about people that would be good to serve on that commission. Anything else for that for tonight?
No, I've had some interest from people, but I'm still unsure about the city resident versus non-city resident. I just think you can open up a can of worms when you have non-residents making decisions that affect residents and getting some kickback on that. I don't know if saying if you have to own a business, you can live outside the city but own a business, but I think we need to just take a little bit better look at that. And if we can get everybody in the city, that would be great.
Well, Miss Bailey does live in the city, but again, she had her exhibit here. She is a painter, so.
Okay.
Sign ordinance city tour. We talked about this last time. You've all received a draft of our new sign ordinance. Mr. Sanders, did everybody get that? Did you send that out to everybody, the agenda, proposed agenda?
No, I needed approval of that.
He had contacted me about trying to arrange a city tour for this Friday. And Mr. Sanders and Mr. Davis did a fantastic job of putting together a tour of Lawrenceville, Swanee, Lawrence, and Norcross, looking at their signs. Unfortunately, I think I was unclear. I was thinking of a city tour, meaning the city of Snellville, not other cities, but I think what he put together was fabulous, and I think it's a good idea. I can't schedule an all-day tour for this Friday, so we're tentatively looking at the next Friday, which would be the 21st. I don't know if I can make that date or not. It won't require a special call meeting because it is a tour, and there's a special exception for that under the new Open Meetings, Open Records Act, right? All right. But we'll get that date. If anybody has any problems with the 21st, if you could let Butch know. And
I won't be here.
You won't be here, okay. So we'll try to maybe find another date.
Okay. John has done a great job getting that organized, talked to the folks over in Norcross. We're really trying to kill 2 birds with 1 stone there. Talk about the proposed sign ordinance and some of the hot spots in that ordinance, see how other people address issues, as well as the monument and wayfinding signs. Trying to take another step forward, get everybody on the same page, get input from everybody. What do you like? What don't you like? So we can kind of get our arms around that issue. And so John will kind of go back to the
Well, wait,
just square one and try to get
before
a
we go
date.
back for, what were the times on that? Do you have those times with you where we were at different places?
I just happen to have those times with me. And if you want to just kind of pass it out. I had set up something with Chris McCrary, who's my counterpart in Norcross, as a place to start. They've done a really fine job of developing signage over there, both wayfinding and identity signage. And Chris was gonna go through what they did to get where they are today. And then I had additional stops at, I figured we'd probably be in Norcross for about an hour and a half or so. We could get some lunch in Norcross at a very fine place called the Iron Horse Tavern. And then depart there and head up by Gwinnett Place Mall, check their signage and their directional material out. From the mall, head up towards Swanee. They have some excellent stuff that has been done there. Then come back down through Lawrenceville, looking at your monument signage where you come into town. And then that would get us back here about 3 o'clock.
It's possibly, I've been to Norcross recently, so I've seen their signs.
Well, just be that way.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm trying to see if maybe we can make this work on Friday. If possible, maybe, I know Councilman Sabag and I have an engagement on Friday. Maybe we can meet y'all at Gwinnett Place Mall and just skip the Norcross tour. Does Friday work for everybody else?
I'm out of time.
Oh, never
Okay.
mind.
So perhaps we push this back to a different date.
Yes, so we'll send out some dates
I
and see.
will,
Coordinate it.
I'll call Chris and wave him off.
Is this format though, is everybody like this? What we talked about doing though is adding just maybe a 20 or 30-minute tour at the end then of the city, so we can point out some
Sure.
concerns for the city.
Okay.
All right, so we'll email some dates to everyone and let you know what will happen. Foreclosed or vacant property registration. I know Councilman Howard and Councilman Emmanuel emailed some concerns. Y'all are right, a new bill went into effect July 1st, 2012. I've been advised by the city attorney. So what we're gonna ask is that staff and the city attorney look at it and see if it's worth us we still could go forward, but we don't know if it's worth going forward. So we're gonna ask them and allow them to report back if they wanna go forward or not with this.
Yeah, I'm just concerned too about putting burdens on people that don't need the burdens. There's some people who do need the burden, but
When we talked about it last time, the ordinance that was drafted just applies to foreclosed property. It doesn't apply to vacant property. And so that was confusing to me, but there, I thought the legislature this past year loaded up a bunch of conditions that have to be built into the ordinance. And it did lower the fee to $100 maximum. Penalty's the same, but it's watered down dramatically in terms of its effect. And it just became, did the staff look at it, if they could use it as a tool still, so, like a key ingredient, so.
The next three, the community garden leagues, I believe they met and we're still waiting on some direction from the community garden, what they decide they wanna do. Monument signs we're putting off until after the sign tour so that we can have better information to discuss. CPI increase for Waste Pro, I believe Butch met with them and that has come off until further notice. I don't believe at this point in time they are seeking that increase. So then that brings us, Eric, you got 5 minutes to get us through URA.
I'm gonna be shorter than that and then leave my time to Tony because he's got a couple of things I know he needs to raise. Mayor and Council, I put before you my report. I just would make sure as you look at that, 2 things to bring to your attention, and maybe let me say 4, I'll be quick. The URA board did meet on September 4 and approved the draft that's been sent to you. The goal of the urban redevelopment plan is to articulate areas, goals, and objectives for redevelopment for the URA. Those 4 areas of target for the URA are listed on the bottom of the front page, and there's actually the map on the back side so you can see where those 4 areas are still. And then the final thing I'll point out to you is the 5 redevelopment strategies are as well listed on the back, and those come straight out of the strategic action agenda that was approved by council back in June. And I'll take questions, otherwise I'll turn it over to council.
Area number 4, Lenore Church Road. Can you elaborate a little more?
The best way I think I can elaborate on that is the blue section right there, Mike. That's the whole area that it would encompass. And I don't know street boundaries right off the top of my head to know what they are, but that's where it is. I can provide this to you. It's mainly around the Briscoe Park area and some of those neighborhoods. They are in a priority order as well, listed there, 1, 2, 3, 4. And the town center is the primary focus. If I could put it in the URA folks' terms, as in you do for real estate sales, there's the town center, and the town center is really their focus. But I encourage them to pick some other areas as we were doing this, because there may be opportunity to work in some other areas, so that's why those other areas are there.
Other questions for Eric?
No, Eric, thank you for this. This is very helpful.
The plan requires, are you gonna go with that?
Advertising, yes.
Okay.
The plan requires advertising of a public hearing before adoption of the plan. So we've got an advertising requirement. It's not time sensitive, so we'll be able to meet the requirement before the next meeting. We're gonna put it on public hearing agenda for mayor and council. Most of the duties can be allocated to the URA, the agency itself, but there are a few restrictions to that. One of them is when you designate the slum or affected areas, you have to not only do that at the council level, but you've got to advertise it before that meeting takes place. So those are some critical ingredients that are reserved to mayor and council. Most of the powers can be allocated, and frankly, you have allocated those to the URA. So advertisement and then plan. When it's advertised, there's some specific requirements of what goes in there. It's the date, time, and place of the hearing, the area covered by the urban redevelopment plan, which in this case you've identified 4 areas. The preamble to your plan itself would make a good disclosure of what the subject matter of the meeting is going to be. But just a few issues in there that need to be clearly set out in that advertisement a little longer than normal. That should be ready to go, ready for you to vote on it. I think that meets the CID's timeframe, what they need to do to submit to opportunity zones. As you hear it this time, even though you're in some way critiquing the areas that you're designating, in order to get to the opportunity zone benefit of tax credits, you gotta go through this process. So it's a blessing. You're gonna call them a name, and then you're gonna bless them with an opportunity.
Do we have to, I've got some concern with redevelopment area 4, especially if we have to label that as a slum area, because that is highly
Those are-
residential. And because it is residential, I know that they have been very vocal in coming out and against economic development in that area, not economic, business development. So I don't understand why they need to be affected by the opportunity zone, or why we would need to include them in the plan. I'll put that out there, and maybe we can
Yeah.
get a report back
Let
on
me do that,
that.
because I need more than a minute to answer that question, but I'd be glad to.
Because if I'm not, based on this, it looks like that's the Hickory Hills subdivision that you have highlighted in blue. Any other questions on the URA plan? If you have questions between now and then, the next council meeting, I encourage everybody to get with Mr. Sanders, or maybe sit down with Eric and see if we can hash out specific concerns with the plan, so we can address them before we start advertising it to the public. Then we just have notice of the upcoming zoning, and that concludes our work session. Anybody, we've got about 3 minutes left. Anybody have anything they need to discuss before we adjourn into the meeting? We will reconvene in about 5 minutes.